Heavy gun tanks, such as the Centurion, are in service with British and other armies in many parts of the world, and are large and complex pieces of equipment. These must be kept in a state of immediate readiness. Up to the present, it has been necessary to have an extensive and complex servicing and inspection facility always available. But even so, a tank under existing storage conditions still requires many hours of work expended on it before it is ready for use. This time lag has now been overcome by the use of the dry-clad system. Tanks have been stored in such covers for up to 2 years, and apart from the labour involved in fitting batteries, a tank can be issued in a battle-worthy condition within a few hours. The components of the cover are relatively few in number and capable of transportation in a light lorry and readily handled by 1 or 2 men. The first operation is to lay baseboards to protect the barrier material from damage. The boards, with the expanded polystyrene uppermost, are positioned so that all surfaces under load are covered. No boards are fitted in the centre of the rectangle, as this portion will not be taking any load, and the dry-clad barrier will not be subject to damage. A flooring of dry-clad is next laid to provide a complete moisture vapour barrier below the vehicle, and is positioned accurately over the base. The main load-bearing boards are fitted on the barrier material with the expanded polystyrene surface underneath. These are fitted with sockets which will later house high-pressure tubes. Run-on boards are laid in order to prevent damage to the cover. The lower board is positioned to leave a gap into which the rolled skirt of the dry-clad floor is laid. This is then completely covered by the upper run-on board. This completes the first stage of the operation, and the tank can now be driven forward onto the base, the driver making certain that it is centrally positioned. The main cover will be supported by high-pressure tubes which are inflated to a pressure of 100 pounds per square inch. These are bent where creases are fitted and are brought into position over the tank, the longer of the tubes occupying the central position. The tube ends are retained in the sockets on the baseboards on either side of the tank. To ensure stability in the structure, the tubes are now braced by means of 3 pairs of steel stays, one central and one on either side. To prevent wind pressure on the cover lifting the main base at the edges, the run-on boards are wedged under the tank tracks. The main dry-clad cover can now be fitted over the tank. The gun is first passed through the hole provided, and the cover drawn over the tubes, which are laced into it by means of large internal flaps. These prevent any movement of the cover relative to the tubes likely to be caused by wind pressure. Humidity within the cover is controlled mechanically. The electrical lead and drain tube are run through an orifice in the cover so that the condensate from the dehumidifier is drained externally. A dial-type gauge is used inside the cover to facilitate inspection checks of the internal humidity conditions. The cover is sealed with a dry lock section which runs completely around the base and is closed by means of a special slider operated by 2 men. One of these draws the cover together, whilst the second moves the slider along the section. A protective skirt is lowered. This is laced down to rings fitted to the lower baseboards and is pulled taut, ensuring the cover is tensioned against wind pressure. Finally, the gun sock is placed in position and a junction made with the main dry-clad cover by means of a dry-lock section. The complete operation usually takes 1.5 hours. The tank can now remain without further attention for any desired period, subject to exercising at intervals of from 8 to 12 months. Control tests have proved that vehicles stored in this manner for 2 years under temperate or tropical conditions have remained serviceable and free from corrosion.